join your fellow Starseeds, Lightworkers, and Experiencers at the 2024 Full Disclosure Now Conference, this July 15th to 18th. This conference will be a fun and positively life-changing experience for so many. In addition to 4 days and nights of presentations, there will be special event dinners, dancing, fun time on the beach, UFO night watch tours, film screenings, vendors, and more at the lovely Serrata Beach Resort on St. Pete Beach, Florida. Over 34 Montauk Project survivors, Secret Space Program whistleblowers, ET contactees, and psychic healers will be presenting in the name of the Full Disclosure Movement. The truth must be revealed if we're all to achieve our Star Trek future here and now. Get your event passes and book your stay now at fulldisclosuremovement.org.
Welcome Disclosure Now viewers and subscribers. We have an exciting announcement to bring to your attention. Arkeem Ra and Audrey Walters have created a new YouTube channel called New Earth Light Brigade to help bridge the gap between the secret space program and Starseed communities. There will be a focus on topics which help each other more deeply understand important truths that help create solutions for problems faced by both communities. There will be a live stream every Sunday at 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. A link to the new channel as well as Audrey's Starnet link is available in the description of this video. This is Disclosure Now with Arkeem Ra and Brian Zeng, a show where we expose the truths that are nefariously hidden from humanity. Today's guest is Mark Sabbas. Mark began working on his novel The Monarchs in 2014, and over the years has come to the realization the book is based on real events he experienced in Black Ops programs. Arkeem remembers serving with Mark under Project Phoenix 2. A link to purchase Mark's book is in the description.
All right, this is Disclosure Now with Arkeem Ra and Brian Singh, and today we have a very special guest, Mark Sabbas. Is that how I say your last name? I should have asked that before.
Yeah, Sabbas, you did well with that.
Okay,
Yeah.
Mark Sabbas, and Mark Sabbas has a book that he just came out with called The Monarchs. Is that it, right? Or
Yep.
The Monarchs. And so this is how this all happened, people. This is like all unfolding basically, like practically right before your eyes, like. So I saw his book on my friend Katie McBray's timeline. Am I saying her name right? I don't like saying people's
Katie
names.
Mabry.
Okay, Katie
Yep,
Mabry.
I think.
Yeah,
Sorry, Katie, if I butchered them.
I saw your book. She was like, "Oh, I was so excited to read," and I was like, "Oh, wow, I've seen that book before, like not like in other timelines, and it's like a really important book." And I kind of figured you're some big guy that's like well known that I just didn't meet yet for some reason, but then I got found out like you're new. And so this is the wild part, people. This is the part that really kind of floors me. Well, the whole thing does. This is all wild. This is a bit of a roller coaster. Is his book is a novel that he started working on in 2014, and he wrote it like a fictional account, like a novel. And now he's realizing, wait, he's like found people like us, Tony Rodriguez, et cetera, you know what I mean? Learning about the super soldier programs and stuff. And he's like, wow, this is like what my book said. And he's like, so wait, and now he's having dreams and things like that that have to do with the programs, which we're going to talk about a little bit in this interview. And I guess the real heavy part, which we're gonna be a little bit vague on it because we don't want to put out public details and air out people's personal lives too much. You know what I mean? Where to the point where it's unnecessary, and we want to consult with everybody where we talk about before we talk about it openly. But essentially, I know is his father, who I believe, and he's still kind of on the fence because it's pretty intense information, right? Like, it takes a minute to assimilate, even if he is going to agree with me. But basically, I know his biological father from Montauk Project, and I knew him as Xavier at Montauk, and I remember like kind of his abilities. I remember that um post junior, he trained a lot of the kids that were still being turned in, like trained to be time soldiers that were kind of leftovers, as it were. And yeah, I just like remember all sorts of stuff about him. And it's also like I feel like I've reconnected with like a long lost friend, right? Like somebody who I was very close with in who I watched kind of grow up. I remember you had like a graduation ceremony of some sort that I was at where I was super proud of you. So like I almost like a paternal figure in a way, like an uncle kind of figure in a way. I feel like I kind of, but then after enough time missions, you don't really feel older than other people. You kind of all just feel like you're the same age. But there was that going on. And yeah, it's just been super interesting, and also learning about your book being like a novel, but then realizing like, wait a minute, is this recall? Because I've talked about this before in other interviews and stuff like that on my channel and other people's channels, where I made comics when I was a child, when I was like between like 9 and 12 years old, where I realized not later they were recall. And then Phillip K Dick also talks about how The Man in the High Castle and Blade Runner and all these different books are based on alternate realities that he's experienced, that he's lived in and stuff. So it gets pretty deep. And I think it'd be correct to say that Mark is kind of just dipping his toes in the rabbit hole a little bit still. But also he wrote a whole book about these programs, and I think he's kind of blowing his own mind with that, right? Is that kind of like my like a correct assessment of your situation right now? Is like you're finding out more and more about these MK Ultra Black Ops like time travel programs, and you're like, what the hell? How did I write about all this? Right? Is that kind of what is going on with you, Mark?
Yeah, thanks, Arkeen, for the wonderful and pretty mind-blowing introduction. And what's up, Brian? Yeah, you're correct. I did start writing this book. Well, the idea came to me all the way back a decade ago. So back in 2014. And back then I wasn't even aware of like my labs or Monarch programming even. The book is called The Monarchs, and it is about the main character. He is abducted by the military, so it does refer heavily to my lab programming and Monarch programming. And he's part of this wave of new youth children with large eyes and psychic abilities. It kind of refers to star seeds or indigo children. I was really inspired back then, and they are being tested at the onset of this novel. They're being tested at a military facility for their psychic abilities. He undergoes electroshock therapy, quote unquote, and among other forms of sort of monarch mind control to kind of bring out his abilities. And actually, in the first chapter, I don't want to give it away, but he undergoes an experiment and he is mind wiped and he forgets what happened during the experiment. And lots of what he remembers is replaced by screen memory. So there's a lot of these concepts in here. And I base it all on an outline based on this download I received in 2014 before I even really knew about all this stuff. So yeah,
And
it is kind of interesting.
to you from your own perspective, you're like, wow, these are some cool ideas I'm having. Like, what the heck? I gotta
Yeah.
make a book out of this. And fast forward a decade, now you're like, wait a minute, there's like a reality somewhere underneath this like novel that I wrote. Like it's still a fictional story, obviously, a fictional account, but sounds to me like you're realizing it was based on real events, which I think I just found out about this book like a couple of days ago, but I'm definitely fascinated to read it. It's just been a storm of everybody coming out with books, and you know what it is right now. Not to get too far off track, but I do want to bring this up while I'm thinking about it. Is think about this information, how clandestine is, how compartmentalized it is, and how, let's say this was some sort of one person with a big channel on national television or something. What if they're doing this, right? You just take them out, right? Easily. Think about how there's like 20 me's right now, 20 different versions of me, like who are super soldier people. They have their YouTube channels, they're interviewing people. You can't take 20 of us out that are all doing the same thing at the same time. I kind of just had that realization the other night where I'm like, wait a minute. Yeah, like even though we're kind of all over the place and in our own little circles, all it really takes is us coming together a bit more, and that's been a good thing. It's protected us. But anyway, I don't want to
Yeah.
get too sidetracked from your book.
Uh,
Um,
yeah, I want to ask you a question there, Mark. Because you were telling Arkeem and I here about how there was a download in 2014. Can you tell us some more about that download, please?
All right. Well, full disclosure, I was on sort of psychedelic substance at the time, which I had been using on and off, and I was at a beach, and that was during my spring break college trip, actually. And I don't know if you could call it a Kundalini awakening, but I was kind of had this, I've been practicing Qigong this past year or so to try to better open my energetic centers. But even back then, I felt like this incredible kind of opening of my chakras, my energetic centers, and I kind of felt my crown chakra open, and I had a wonderful kind of experience, but I think the very next day I just received all these ideas, like fully formed ideas of like, hey, what I should write for a novel. Like the very next morning, I think it was. So it's just kind of something that I think was um actually I remember I was walking out in this and under the night sky that night, and I saw like these lights flash in the sky, and I turned to look, and but the lights were vanished. It was like these flashes of light. It's actually referenced in my book, but I'm pretty sure it was the next morning. I just received all these ideas for characters, what I should write about, and there's been so many synchronicities between like what I've written about and what I've later discovered. Like later on, after I got the initial ideas and outline back in 2014, I haven't been writing it for a full 10 years. It's been on and off, but the outline came all the way back, dates all the way back to 2014. And
yeah,
I know
I'd like
Arkeem,
to supplement something and just say
go
that
ahead.
there's been a psyop sort of in the public, where if you were to have some sort of realization on psychedelics, that means that you've realized some sort of lunacy, something that's fictional or not real, which I'm not saying that can't happen, but back in the day when you would trip, a shaman would be with you, and so even if it was maybe fictional, there was some reality to it, and they would be there to help you explain and interpret what you're seeing to help you understand. So there is a reality there, and it's like kind of like the same thing with cannabis, in my opinion, where it helps break down their deprogramming. And so of course they want people to think, oh, well, if this guy had some sort of great realization to write this book and he was tripping, whether or not it's a beautiful, brilliantly written novel with a great story or not, that obviously means it's all bullshit and there's no way it could be based on reality. And I would have to say that like that's poppycock, and that's programming to think that you can't have realizations, you can't realize things, that psychedelics can't be used for spiritual realizations. In the same breath, though, I always gotta have nuance with things and balance. You can't just like eat psychedelics all the time and have that be how you come to realizations. But a healthy amount, it can be good for you. Then there's studies that prove this and stuff. So I just want to say that like just because you had this idea after like maybe a bit of a psychedelic trip, to me, rather than that have that make me be like questioning you and think that it's not true, like I think I understand, because psychedelics can connect you with your higher self and bring messages through that normally are blocked off because our psychic connections are kind of like untethered, like disconnected purposefully through like the kind of like the grid that we're all, the mind control grid that we're all under right now. So I think it's actually really interesting that's how you got that download. And yeah, I really appreciate you, sharing that information with us and being open about it and not feeling like, because some people might feel like they need to hide that and not talk about that or something like that. And I think it's good and brave of you to just say the truth, and people should just be more honest about it, because I think the stigma is bullshit. And I think that a lot of these substances, they can be abused, of course, but they can also be used in a medicinal manner and be incredibly healthy for people. So that's my opinion
I
on it.
agree. It's all about this personal discernment. I've done, ayahuasca, Germany, psilocybin. They've been incredibly helpful, also very tough at times. It's about your personal discernment, whether or not you're feeling called, whether or not you feel ready to do such things. I'm not entirely endorsing it, but it could be a tool. You don't want to use it as a crux, so you don't want to have to rely on it, but they're great teachers. These plant medicine. I truly believe that. And yeah, thanks for the opportunity to here to talk about my book and the program. Actually, I should talk about something that happened after we met earlier today, because I'm part of Tony Rodriguez. I didn't even tell you this, Arkeem, but I'm part of Tony Rodriguez remote viewing group. We could talk more about that and the different psi phenomenon that I've experienced if you want. But people in that group I've grown close to. Shout out to I'll just shout out Adrian, shout out Anastasia, and Katie was part of that group, and among other people. And they also have memories coming in. And Adrian and Anastasia, we were on a call earlier, just a couple hours ago, and they were doing a remote viewing session. And Anastasia was probing, she was searching her elementary school because she, like you, Arkeem, I've heard you talk about the talented and gifted program. She also believes that she was taken from um, this talented and gifted program, and she remembers being tested in this program, and among other weird stuff.
I think there's too many of us coming forward
Yeah.
about it for us to like say like use the terminology she believes. Let's be
Uh,
careful about what terminology we use. That's perp kind of terminology. No offense, but she experienced it. I don't think it's
She
a she believes.
experienced it. Yeah, she
Yeah.
experienced it. These programs are real. And when she was probing the data, this is what I was getting to. She discovered this room in her elementary school that she knows something happened to her there. When she was probing for during a remote viewing session, she was like, "What happened to me?" And she kept on hearing what's in Mark's book, referring to this book right here. So we had to get on a call, and Adrian and Anastasia had to explain that to me, and I basically explained what happened in it happens in my book, which very much alludes to what happens in Montauk, as I'm sure you'd agree when you read it. These kids, which is based off Stranger Things, is based off that. It was initially called Montauk,
Mhm.
and these kids are being tested for psychic abilities. The main character has telekinesis, among other abilities. In the novel, remote viewing, astral projection, telepathy, eye location, even mentions like portal travel, and it gets into the starseed and EP
Where did the
stuff.
Monarchs title come from? Like the what where does that title and then the wings and the imagery and everything with the monarch, where did that come through?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So monarch butterfly has multiple connotations, as I'm sure you know. People in this community will know monarch programming, but one of the things I like to assert is that, you know, I don't think monarch butterfly is, to me, intrinsically negative symbol, like because they've tried to
No.
invert all of our symbols, like
Mhm.
phoenix, they've inverted monarch butterfly, even any symbol that had an initially
If it's
positive meaning, but they've
powerful.
inverted. The swastika is another example. So many symbols I think the dark players have really inverted. And monarch butterfly to me ultimately, yeah, it alludes to monarch programming, but and ultimately refers to spiritual transformation. So this novel, while it alludes to, yeah, definitely the Montauk um, and uh, my lab programs, and I would agree it's based in reality. But it is ultimately about the narrative. The narrator, he goes on a whole odyssey from there. The protagonist is told in first person, and he uh, he goes through a spiritual awakening. There's kind of this metaphysical, metacognitive thing going on in which he kind of realizes he's this character uh, in a story, and he connects to God or quote unquote author consciousness, and he kind of realizes this oneness, this universal field of consciousness with which he and all other characters are connected, and through that he learns to control his psychic abilities better. He, in a sense, transcends um, time. There's a whole story that that I'm skipping over, but he learns to transcend kind of his ego, I should say, and step into his higher self, his higher awareness. Another cool thing about this book, besides the psychic aspect, it's filled with action, it's filled with exposing these programs, which I really wanted to do. But it also, I'm sure you would appreciate this, Arkeem, because I know you're a musician, but it also has a heavy music aspect. So it kind of, this theme of the musical theory of the universe kind of plays throughout. Samuel, the main character, he has a tutor who introduces him to philosophy and music records. And there's kind of this theme running throughout that music is all around us, that everything can be expressed through frequency, sound, and geometry, which I think is true. And I actually had to get print license permissions for 24 different songs to use in this novel. So from artists ranging from anywhere from the Beatles, Fleetwood Mac, Jimi Hendrix, Radiohead, The Flaming Lips, like you name it. Like there's lots of real songs referenced in this novel, and often synchronistically, like there's hidden lyrics embedded into certain aspects of this novel. It
Yeah,
could be either
that's an
overtly,
aspect of you understanding like the Montauk
yeah.
product in the program and that bleeding through, because that was all something that we understood deeply. Why do you think that we made music at Montauk while there was a recording studio at Montauk? And so much of the music that people grew up to and fell in love to and everything else was made at Montauk's. And then it all has to do with everything you're talking about. Brian, you look like you have a question.
Yeah, I wanted to ask because, Mark already brought up the show Stranger Things, and obviously it's based on the Montauk Project, and that show is just entering into its fifth season. And then here you are, you had this download back in 2014, 10 years ago. So what's it like for you watching this TV show? Is your mind like kind of blown or what?
Yeah, it is kind of blown. Actually, when I first found out that show, like, uh, discover that show and seeing all these kids with being tested in this lab, and telekinesis was probably their main character, as is the main character's uh character, it was kind of mind-blowing, kind of synchronistic. I've also seen other movies recently that kind of paralleled that, like The Darkest Minds, for example. So yeah, I think this stuff is everywhere, and I think it is something that's bleeding through into our from our subconscious, or from like a deeper aspect of ourselves. Uh, Markeem, you mentioned the name Savior, for instance. There's a character in my book named Savior. There's lots of synchronicities within this novel. And I think many people, especially in this community who are familiar with the programs, would really find they would find more value. I shouldn't say value, but they would see things that other people wouldn't in
So I
this
think I
book.
think it's like
Yeah.
also a good way to approach people with this. So something that you can do, which is kind of nice with your book, is you did write it as a fiction, as a piece of fiction, and as a novel,
Yeah.
and it's sort of a piece of art. So when you
Yeah.
present it to people, there's none of this, oh yeah, so there's these programs and yada yada yada. But you can just be like, oh, check out this interesting book that I wrote. And then people read it, and then it makes them thinking like, wow, this seems like this could actually like be real, right? Which is, what a lot of television shows do for a lot of us in the programs and stuff like that too. Yeah, that even happens. But yeah, I just think it's a positive thing just to put it out there in such a way where it's not so necessarily like, hey, you gotta believe me, look at what happened to me. It's more of just like, here's this information, it's like a novel. There's no like, hey, you gotta believe me, or like whatever. It's just like, it's just there, and people can just like take it as what it is. I think that's a great thing to bring to the table, because there's a lot of people releasing books right now, which is great. You got all these different people doing it at the same time, which is wonderful. And yeah, but I feel like yours just brings a kind of a special little, like something different, something special to the table, where it's a novel and it's not necessarily you based on your life, but at the same time, lo and behold, we're realizing maybe it was, but not in a way where you necessarily have to convince people or anything like that. It's just presented as it is.
Yeah, that's a great point. And truth in fiction is one of the greatest, I believe, tools of disclosure that we have right now. And my goal is to spread this. It's an entertaining book, whether or not you're familiar with the programs or not, whether or not you're into even psychic abilities or aspects of spirituality. I think anyone could find this entertaining. There's a love story that develops. There's lots of real life wisdom. I wanted to instill. There's a lot of action. It's packed with action. There's this rogue group of psychic children who don't want to give too much away, but they attack the facility and they want to basically rule over anyone who doesn't have the same powers. But so it's filled with action and plot, which I believe is pretty engaging. And I think my one of my missions is kind of to spread this to. I would like to spread it to a larger commercial audience, while at the same time, because I don't want to kind of spread it to an echo chamber. I want it to be spread to a large audience and plant seeds. I think just planting seeds about what is possible. Because even if you don't believe in the programs, you would find inspiration with some of the things that's written in the book, even if it's just with the spiritual inspiration. I wanted to be very spiritually uplifting and inspiring and inspire confidence in one's own abilities and the potentials of consciousness. Because one of the greatest things that the controllers of this matrix, whatever you want to call it, have done is convince us that we are powerless, that we come out of a dead universe, we live in a dead, callous, disconnected universe that sprang from ultimately nothing. There's no higher consciousness behind it. Consciousness is just some strange accident emanating from the brain. There's nothing outside of just dead matter, that we're disconnected from a callous universe. When in reality, the complete opposite is true. Consciousness is really all we can know. It's all there is. Consciousness is fundamental and universal, and where there's this universal unified field of consciousness. Some people call it the quantum field, with which we're constantly interacting in every moment. And I think once we step into our higher, once we do spiritual work, we activate our energetic centers. We step into our true power. We become more aligned with our soul's purpose and our higher self. I think, our latent DNA, and this book alludes to that as well. Our DNA is suddenly becomes more activated, and our latent abilities, which I have also experienced firsthand, also become activated, and you learn firsthand. Yeah, I mean, consciousness is really there's a universal field of a quantum field of consciousness, because otherwise, these abilities wouldn't. There would be no foundation for them. They couldn't exist. So I've also been very interested. I've been astral projecting. That's one thing that I've been doing, in lucid dreaming for many years. I also, for many years, I've been interested in remote viewing, and I trained under an instructor recently from the Farsight Institute, and she taught me the scientific methodology of remote viewing. That was taught by the military, and I'm part of a remote
You're
viewing
getting
group
shit
now.
done, brother.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, all that stuff, lots of the stuff in this novel with regard to like psi abilities and spiritual phenomenon and things I've encountered on the astral plane as well, that it's reflected from my own experience.
Can,
So
can,
I,
can
I
you talk
have
about
had,
that, Mark? About maybe, here you are, you wrote this novel, and it's speaking about like these types of, underground military base facilities. And then now you've studied under the Farsight Institute, who Yeme Janae is going to be speaking at our conference in 2 weeks, as
yeah.
well as our team here. Do you then put into practice the remote viewing capabilities, and then you're confirming for yourself kind of what you already had in this download and what you already put in this novel? Are you then confirming that in real life by remote viewing these real life bases?
Yeah, well, the thing about remote viewing that I've learned is that it's a blind methodology. So all we know is just the target number. That's all we know. And that's actually how I had to pass the Farsight Institute's test through 10 hours of private instruction. And then they sent me uh, just 8 digits via email, nothing else. And I had to do a solo session, and I had to correctly describe the main aspects of the target. And so I just received Voyager a certification from Farsight, but there's a lot of levels above that that I've yet to penetrate. They're very serious and scientific about their methodology, and I don't claim to be an expert remote viewer by any means. There are people who could definitely remote view front loaded, which means you know what the target is. But I think you have to be a trained psychic to really differentiate what comes from your conscious mind or imagination and what comes from your higher self or your subspace mind, as Farsight likes to call it. But yeah, myself and others in Tony's group, we have used remote viewing to kind of we're starting to do this now. We actually just met about this. We want to use remote viewing and start giving each other personal targets to really try to activate ourselves, activate our gifts, and really to help uncover memories. And people in the group, I haven't done this yet, but people in the group have done this, and to help them uncover certain memories and or so that's already kind of in progress. But yeah, I mean, it's been really a journey for me. Um, I like Arkeem said at the beginning, I have had lots of strange experiences in, astral projection experiences. I've encountered certain beings. I've had very weird dreams recently too. So I don't want to completely confirm that this was based on something real, but at the same time, the more I know, the more I come to grips with the so many other people who have had same experiences. They talk about it, come to grips with the technology that they have, the technology to literally take you out of your localized time space and clone you as well. When I was a kid, I was when I was a little kid, I was for some reason I was super interested in cloning. I read multiple books about cloning when I was like in elementary or middle school, around that age. Also, when I was a little kid, I would have this uh lady come and take me out of class. I don't think I told you this about or this told you about this, Arkeem, but I would have this woman come and take me out of class and uh just give me these more advanced problems to solve. And it was just me, and I never really knew why, or was never really given a reason. But just earlier on that call, I was discussing my friend Anastasia, who knows she was involved in that. She was talking about the same thing with, the talented and gifted program. So, I have all this has culminated with some very suggestive dreams. I've had recently dreams which even mention Montauk by name. So,
Can you go into detail, some
yeah.
of those things into detail? Go ahead and like take the floor. Feel free to go on a little rant. If take as much time as you need to just explain some of these dreams that you've had.
All right. So I like to be very scientific about my methodology. I'm just going to share my experiences and people are free to interpret it as they wish. But some of the dreams I've had that um, might suggest something deeper going on. I had a very vivid dream recently where I was talking with my mother in my dream, and I was telling her, "Hey, um, I have to tell you something. Something happened to me when I was young. Like I was abducted. Like, and there's a whole, that's not the full dream, but that was basically the essence of what was going on. Then I keep a dream journal to kind of keep track of all this. But there was another dream where um, there was this little girl, sort of like a character from my book. And then the little girl was staring at me, and I was kind of lucid because I do lucid dreaming, and sometimes I'm just awake in a dream or on the astral realm. It's just something that sort of happens to me now. And um, she was staring at me, but then she was being taken away by like these two men, like military men. And while she was being taken away, she just looked at me and she was repeating like Montauk, 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 Montauk. So um, that led me to look more into the Montauk project. I've had another dream where I was kind of this was not a dream. This was like an astral experience where I was kind of completely lucid and aware of what was going on. But I was kind of observing myself, like sitting back and observing what I was doing. And I was like in a small room and I was eating from like this bowl. It looked like, it looked like I was eating like dog food or something. Now I don't know if it was metaphorical or not, but it was a really creepy vibe, and there was this TV, and they was showing really weird images on the TV, and it gave me MK Ultra type vibes, honestly. And later that night, because I recorded this in my journal, later that very same night, I kind of transitioned into another dream, and one of my middle school friends was talking to me, and he was talking to me specifically about recovering secret space program memories. And then the very next day after that, I had a dream that I was on a military mission, but it was kind of weird because there was kind of like this time loop thing that went on. The guy was repeated the same thing twice. So I can't remember all of the details. I've had a lot of other weird in my experiences with astral projection and lucid dreaming. I've had a lot of really weird experiences on
Your
that plane,
higher
like
self couldn't make it any more clear to you, my friend.
yeah, and it's not only been happening to me, it's also been happening to my wife. She's had recurring dreams that are probably even more vivid and crazy than I have, and she's not in even into this stuff. Like she doesn't actively research this stuff. So who knows? Like just becoming aware of what's possible in the technology that we have, and obviously since the Roswell crash, there's been retrieval programs, interaction with extraterrestrial civilizations straight up. There's no denying that. We have technology that could displace us out of time and that could clone us. When I was reading a book as a kid, they were talking about, when I was a kid, they were talking openly about clonade, about cloning Dolly the
I
sheep.
remember that.
Of course, they're cloning people. And that's
Yeah, yeah,
another dream
yeah.
I
Like
had
everyone
recently.
talks about Occam's razor,
Yeah,
like, oh, common sense is all these people talking about SSP are crazy, and it's a simpler answer. And it's like Occam's razor is if this company cloned a sheep, they didn't stop there. And they want money. That's the motivation of what they're doing. And they followed the money and chased the money. And they must have a really good PR team because that was the talk of the town. Everybody was talking about it. It was on the news every day. I remember it. And then all of a sudden,
yeah.
nothing, crickets.
And they said, Clonate said that they actually cloned human people. And
Yeah.
what would stop them
Okay.
if they have the ability? What would stop them? See,
For
same
those
reason why there's
for those of you
bases on,
watching who
yeah,
aren't familiar, who is maybe younger or maybe older and weren't watching the news at the time, maybe had something else going on in your life, that actually happened. Do you remember that, Brian? Like when they're talking about Clonade in the news and stuff?
Well, this was around the time of the Clinton administration and the Dolly the sheep, and then and Bill Clinton comes out and says that all cloning experimentation is going to be banned in like the Western world or whatever. And what I think a lot of people took that to mean is they just took it offshore and then did whatever they wanted while he gave us a window dressing of supposedly human rights restrictions on this type of cloning, which is
That sounds about right. Like,
again,
hey, like I just kind of a joke I gotta make. Quentin, we need to address this clone thing. We need you to come out and you need to tell everybody that there's no cloning going on and we're not gonna do clones anymore. Oh, I'm sorry, I don't know if I can do that. I gotta be honest with people. You know what? Then we can make a clone of you do it. I'm just,
yeah,
just stupid joke, but for real, like kind of not also like you know what I mean? Like it doesn't matter if let's say Bill Clinton actually really did feel like a moral obligation to come out and say that these clandestine three-letter agencies, the president doesn't really have that much oversight over them. They don't really know what's going on. You know what I mean? Not 100%.
no,
It's a need to
yeah,
know basis, and because the president is always like it's like they're only there for 8 years. There's a lot of stuff they're not privy to. A lot of stuff they don't know. It's actually kind of mind
yeah.
blowing when you find out about it. But
Yeah. There's people at the conference, they're Derek and Daniel, forgot their last name, but their grandfather was part of wrote a book about being part of cosmic top secret clearance, which is 25 levels above the need to know basis of the president of the United States. So there you go. Like there's so much stuff that's been happening behind the scenes that we just have no idea about, is never told to the public. The media is completely controlled, and information control is, I believe, one of the aspects of mind control. Because if you control like the information that people get, then their perception can never expand beyond their limited confines of what they think is possible. But in a way, like, I studied philosophy. In a way, the path to true wisdom is letting go of letting go of all of the egoic programming and beliefs, limiting beliefs, and basically everything that you thought was true, letting go of the insistence on thinking that you know anything at all, basically, because everything that we have been taught throughout this since we were born really has been uh, manufactured, or if not manufactured, like completely tailored and controlled to fit our limited uh, uh, belief systems. We're not even taught really who we are on this planet, or if we even have a soul, like what happens after death. We're just in this tiny little frequency band, just in this assembly line lifestyle we're just carrying out, in which we're just taught, hey, like, let's go make a bunch of money and get a good job, and let's just chase after material things and sex,
Yeah,
and
I don't know something
they just
funny.
want to keep us in those lower chakras and never actually uh you know realizing our true capabilities, never actually activating those higher energy centers, and realizing what's possible. So we have to let go of everything that we thought we knew, kind of realize we know nothing, kind of in a Socratic sense, and that is the foundation to true wisdom. Hence, we're open to what's actually possible. So, and we need to be open, because really, yeah, we don't know anything.
Yeah, we
That's
we definitely do
right.
it. And I remember, like, you're making me think of when I was in high school, and I think it was like my social studies teacher was going on this rant, and it was kind of like not really had to do with social study. It was more just like her talking about how we gotta get nice, like we really gotta uh I guess our class wasn't doing that well, and she was talking about how, how important it was for us to get our nice houses and do well and go to college. And I raised my hand in class, and she thought I was going to ask her a genuine question, and I did, but it wasn't, she didn't like it. I was just like, what makes you think that like, why should material wealth and money and like possessions and like things, like, why should that be our number one concern about like what we do when we're done with this being with this? Like, is that what this place
Right.
is for? It's just teach me that material possessions and money and like a big house is like, that's what's important, and not like my community and like connections with the people I care about, and like that, like, isn't that what's important? And like, she just didn't like it, like, and she just like didn't know how to respond to it. And then after that, I couldn't even ask genuine questions when I had like an actual question. She would never call on me. And it's like, people are so programmed that if you just like even ask genuinely, they just sort of like, oh man, they hate it, and then they'll just like try to ignore you if they can. But yeah,
Yeah, people. Sorry,
no,
go on.
you're 100%. You can keep going, like you can
Uh,
add the thought.
Yeah, I mean, people don't want to expand their paradigms, and if the information comes out that defies their limited paradigms, then they might get reactive, and we've seen that for the past few years. We've seen that with science, how even after so many advances in quantum physics, and so many anomalies in quantum physics, such as quantum entanglement, quantum tunneling, the observer effect. And my father was a physicist, and I've also studied quantum physics, and these so many of the great quantum physics physicists were interested in mysticism, because they realized that this new paradigm of reality above the Newtonian level of physics, this new quantum model of reality, it kind of defies materialism. So even our science right now, it's just and I think they do this purposely. It's a control system. They just want us to believe that we're just these mate bags without access to any sort of higher consciousness, higher awareness. We're on this planet for a complete accident, for no real reason, except no higher reason. There's nothing higher to aspire towards. There's no interdimensional or extraterrestrial civilizations that we can aspire towards. So, what else is there to do besides like make money and go after like sex and lower frequency kind of
That's what all it is.
pleasures. So yeah, man, it's all control, man. It's
Like
like
90% of the mind control has to do with the root chakra and sex, like
yeah,
almost all of it.
and shame. We've been seeing that recently too.
Yeah, because
They want,
here's the thing about sex. It's like sex is a sacred, beautiful thing when it's had between consenting adults, and they what they do is they come in and, like you said, with everything like symbols, like and everything else, they invert it and they pervert it, and they can make sex this kind of disgusting thing. And they can do the same thing with music. Music is this beautiful healing frequency thing that helps us express ourselves and learn about ourselves and
yes.
like things. And of course, they come in and they invert it and they pervert it. And the really important thing for people to do in this community, and when people are like researching this stuff and kind of starting to learn about it, is to not throw the baby out with the bathwater and realize that just because someone uses something for nefarious purpose does not mean it's bad. Like for instance, like you can use a knife to stab someone. You can also use that same knife to chop up an onion and put it in a delicious stir fry. So it's like it's all about like, the intention behind things and how you're using things and what you're like the intention is so much of how we do things and like what we're using stuff for. So I think that's really important for people to recognize.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's very true. Brian, let me know if you have any other
Yeah,
questions. I
yeah.
just wanted, yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, I
Yeah.
want to ask Mark, since you've written this book, it looks like it's getting traction. I'm going to be ordering my copy. It's trying to figure out if I want a hard cover or paperback here. But have you gotten any confirmation since then going to print about, is your book somehow related in the larger scheme to the disclosure movement? I mean, that's what it seems like to me. But have you gotten any type of exterior acknowledgement of that?
Well, my book just came out a week ago, so June 25th. It is released through a small Virginia Beach publisher, Kohler Books. I much enjoyed working with that team. And it's available in hardcover, softcover, ebook on Amazon and other major retailers. So that's a short plug. But so your question was about the disclosure movement. I feel that since I began writing it, that this is part of the disclosure movement. This is lots of people, like you're mentioning, are coming out with books, and that's wonderful. I'm loving all these nonfiction books, but truth in fiction is something like real truth in fiction. Let's
Yeah, like let's look at the
non-distorted.
Grapes of
Yeah,
Wrath. That'd be a great example. Well, just like that book was a fictional book that transformed the American landscape in a way where it like helped Americans understand some things that were kind of wrong with our society and take a deeper look at them and stuff like that. And that's what a good book does, is it takes like reality and turns it into fiction to create it a way, like make it entertaining so people really pay attention and get enthralled by it, and then they really get sucked in and really understand it because they're actually like in it instead of being explained. You know what I mean? So it's
yeah.
a hugely powerful tool, and I think I can speak for everybody in the community, even the people who are maybe not aware of you yet, that we're all grateful for your work and what you've done with this book. And I'm really excited. I'm excited to read it.
Thanks, man. Yeah, I appreciate it. Yeah, I don't want to get attached to any expectations, kind of just did it because I felt my soul's calling to do this, to write it, and I really love writing. But it has received some pretty nice reviews so far from independent reviewers, and so I'm pretty happy about that. But I'm fully expecting that some people just won't understand it because even though the main character is 17, it does it can't appeal to a young adult audience. Ultimately, there's some really heavy philosophical subjects and spiritual subjects, metaphysical subjects in this novel. Not to mention it deals with the program. So am also expecting, backlash, but that's kind of to be expected. And Arkeem, you're coming out with a book too, Time and Space Unlimited. So we could also plug that in there, and I'm excited to read that. That could be a sort of nonfiction uh um counterpart
Supplement.
to my novel. They could
Well,
kind
that's
of
what we were just
work
saying
in
on the
tandem.
last show we
Yeah.
did with this guy Brian Minnick, and he has this book Montauk is Strange, and was kind of saying the same thing. And that's what I think is so interesting is we have all these star seeds, light workers, whatever you want to call us, survivors of MK Ultra programs. We're all at the same time coming out with all these books, and that's not a bad thing at all because it's like they can take one of us out, they can't take all of us out. And if we just oversaturate the sphere of the media with this information, it's kind of hard to ignore it, right? It's kind of hard to silence. Like it's easy to silence one person. It's hard to silence like a whole like group of people, like a whole. You know what I mean? It's harder to silence a group
Oh
of
yeah.
people than one person. So we have that going for us, and so many of us that are all coming out saying the same thing, kind of talking about the same programs, and you know, many of us are unaware of each other, and the public, the people that are looking into this stuff and going down the rabbit hole, they're assuredly seeing that. A lot of us don't know each other, are totally unaware of each other, and they're probably having their minds blown, going, wait a minute, like this person over here is saying this, and this person over here is saying this, and um, this news article just came out that confirmed this. Like you can't really connect the dots. They're there. The evidence is all there. It's just the people who say it's all bullshit. They're just got a cognitive dissonance where they refuse to look at the information. That's the reality. They refuse to look at the
Yeah.
information.
It just takes it just same thing with any other mainstream media headline, for instance, like Pizzagate. Like at first, I believe the headline, all it
Me
took was a couple
too, dude.
minutes.
They got me with
All it,
that hook, line, and sinker. They
yeah,
got me. I was like, oh, well, if the Huffington Post and yada yada, it's got whole articles about it, front page, and they're that willing to address it. I just kind of
oh
skimmed
yeah,
through it, and I'm just like, oh, okay, well then it's BS because I never actually looked into it all the way.
looked
My
at
my first
it.
click was on the
Yes,
Huffington Post article. Now, had my click been like 3 weeks before that
the
came out,
the actual
when I
source documents.
yeah, I was I'm like, holy shit.
Yeah,
And then that is what ended up happening later, where I started getting memories back, and I realized like a lot of these people were like satanic P files and stuff
they
like that.
are.
Then
Yes,
that
they
made
are.
me that then I started looking into it more, and I'm like, oh, wait a minute, okay, I should have taken that maybe a little more seriously. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's a cult, and people, I think it's foolish now to think that, Epstein or P. Diddy now, it's just like a one-off thing. Now this guy's like P-file, no, it's an organized cult, and they've been showing us it for a long time now, in music videos and award ceremonies. Their symbolism is
Oh,
everywhere.
Justin's yummy, and also the
Yeah,
tweets he put out. What the heck, man? That is
yeah,
gross, dude. Ugh. Should make
yeah.
anybody's skin crawl.
Yeah, I think he was trying to expose it with the music video. But I was pretty lucky because even at a young age, like 14 years old, I got interested in like 9/11 truth. And soon afterwards, I became interested in like ETs. I'm like, holy shit, this stuff is real. Like a Roswell documentary just happened to come on and when I was in high school. So I got pretty lucky. I already knew at a young age, like, hey, like the government's lying to us. There's some sort of control system here, but I think like what you're saying, Arkeem, like lots of nothing. It's all connected, and in this time period now. I think our parallel selves, our higher selves, it's all orchestrating these events for us behind the scenes, these conferences, for us to meet up, even right now and even earlier today, to talk about this stuff and to activate each other and to help us remember our potentials, help us to remember also memories from the programs and we're truly this is an activation going on. So if there's lots of people who are still very asleep to what's actually going on in the world. It might take a miracle of God for them to finally wake up, but do feel that something is coming. That's kind of what I feel. There's gonna be some sort of event that needs to wake
We're
up.
about to see,
Yeah,
with the election coming up and stuff right now, and I don't want to go into details, but it's not going to be an easy transition period. Let's just put it that way. And we're very likely going to see the end of the United States as we know it. Whether that's positive or negative, we're about to find out. But there's this whole thing where Donald Trump is supposed to be the last president. And when he got elected, and then we had Biden, and we all know Biden's not going to get reelected. Like, come on. So we're going to have
yeah,
Trump president again, and that kind of ominous warning of him being the last president in the Baron Trump books. I'm not claiming that I remember this because I remember like different timelines where he didn't even become president and stuff. So I think it's actually interesting because who knows what will happen, really. I don't know. But I do know that shit's about to get really crazy. So just kind of enjoy the normalcy that we have for a little bit because it's about to get wild. But yeah.
yeah. Yeah, it is gonna it's about to get wild, which is why we need to kind of do spiritual work, I feel, and kind of be empowered within our own selves rather than looking towards any saviors, no matter what happens. And once you're grounded kind of in your heart and grounded in knowing that, no matter what, you're an eternal, powerful, spiritual being. I think we're going to get through this. I think there is a shift in consciousness, and humanity needs to learn this time and not repeat the same mistakes. Um, there's something else I wanted to mention. So I do also work.
Ryan just
Uh,
out.
okay, Brian dipped out. Is wonder if that was an
An
internet.
accident or something happened. Well, oh, okay. I think
He's back.
you must have been an accident. So the
What's up,
B.
Brian?
Okay, we're good. Anyway, you're saying.
Yeah, Brian, let me know if you have any other questions. But I did also want to mention that I work speaking. I One of my other missions I feel I'm doing here is helping to revamp the educational model. And I really have to give credit to Sherry Divban because she's the one spearheading the thing, and she has spearheaded it. If you guys have heard of Sherry Divban, she
Sherry's going to be presenting at our conference as well in 2 weeks.
yeah,
So we got like
Yeah,
everyone
thanks for the
involved.
plug, brother.
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So Sherry actually, I had a session with her like years ago, and she went into like a deep meditation. She came out and she's like, we're going to our higher, I met your higher self and told me that we're going to be working together in the future. Well, fast forward months later, I apply, I get the job as a mentor. I don't even tell her about that or about our session. She don't, not until months after I was already hired. But yeah, it's something that I've been doing the past 2.5 years now, is working as a mentor. Besides my already day job as a financial analyst and besides my writing, I also I've been working as a mentor for the Aramis Creative Learning Center, which is all virtual right now, but I've been teaching uh, some classes to kids and also some to adults, but mostly to kids about a variety of mind expanding subjects. Uh, you name it, like sacred geometry, consciousness and psychic abilities, the soul and reincarnation, ancient civilizations, trying to make them question what we're taught in school, make them question, the false history that and paradigms that we've been taught. So I really want to help these kids kind of, expand their paradigms. And I've already seen the fruits of it when I was at the Journey to Truth conference a couple months ago. I did meet a couple of my students from the classes, and they're extremely gifted children. And the mother and the father were telling me they only got into it because the son was having memories at a young age, 3, 4 years old, of being basically a starseed, being having a life on Mars. Uh,
Wow.
he described the bodies, the ships. He knew about Inner Earth, the Galactic Federation, and all that at a young age. He was speaking about it, and he still does. And yeah, these kids are special. And I told him, the kid, I showed him a video of, if you guys are old, know about Carrie Cassidy. She interviewed this uh, kid Boriska in Russia. He was like a 10-year-old, and he also remembered the same thing, being on Mars and having these terrible wars and eventually coming to Earth. And CIA documents actually from a session that Joe McMonagle did, who was part of the U.S. Military's remote viewing program. He also verifies it, kind of as a side tangent, that there was a civilization on Mars like 1 million years ago, and you could still see the face on Mars in the pyramids. But what Boriska was saying back then is that there's more and more of these special children, these indigo children. He's not he's far from the only one. There's going to be more after him that come and to try to wake people up and basically save them from going down the same fate that Mars did in ending in war. So I think there's kind of this karmic loop going on. And there's lots of these special star seeds coming in, um, and they are, helping to raise the consciousness. And I'm hopeful because I don't think that these special souls would be coming in if there wasn't hope for humanity to kind of avert the same path. But to tie it back to my book, that's kind of also what inspired this book is the indigo children, we call it new youth in the book, but it does refer to star seeds. By the very end, that's going to be very clear. It references genetic manipulation, and it goes into, at the very end, the ET aspect, but I don't want to give it away. It is going to be a trilogy. So this is the first, and it's going to be kind of a time-bending trilogy. So this book, I think it's, it does well on its own. Originally, I wasn't planning to make it into a trilogy, but I've been called now to in fact expand on it and make it into a trilogy because there's a lot of ideas in this book that I feel need to be expanded on. So in the second book, it's going to go more deeply into the ET aspect, the starseed aspect, reincarnation, and exploring the multidimensional self, because I think we're all multidimensional beings, and these other incarnations of our oversoul, whether it be human or non-human or interdimensional, that I think there or parallel lifetimes, there's so much going on that we're just unaware of in this limited consciousness band that in which we live. And they're trying to actively, I think, reach out to us and wake us up. And I've surely experienced that. You two have also surely experienced that. And they can communicate with us in many ways: dreams, visions, uh, images that pop into our mind, feelings, gentle nudges. Synchronicity is a big thing to look out for. That's something that really helped wake me up, just seeing synchronicity everywhere, and just being guided. And synchronicity is something that's was not some hippie concept. It was talked about by Nobel Prize winning quantum physicist Wolfgang Pauli. He actually coined the term synchronicity along with Carl Jung, and he thought there was a link between synchronicity and quantum entanglement. But basically, we're always interacting with this quantum field of probabilities, and synchronicity is kind of a way uh, for I think our higher self or certain guides or beings. I think they could basically embed information into the field and kind of and whatever information we need to hear and to help us wake up. So any sort of meaningful coincidence or repeating number and we could basically develop a kind of language or communication with the universe in that respect. And I think that's something worth mentioning because
That's
that's kind of
absolute.
how I live.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're an absolute trove of wisdom, brother, for real. Like you've definitely are I'm looking forward to seeing you on the scene more and seeing you do more interviews and talking about your book more because you're definitely a teacher, man. You're definitely here to educate, to help people along, help people learn, help people grow. Um and obviously you're learning and growing in yourself right now, but in doing so, you're taking other people with you. So that's great, man. I mean, yeah, everything you're talking about is absolutely fascinating and all incredibly important information. Brian, do you have anything else to add to that?
Yeah, Mark, given the content of the book and all this confirmation that you're getting that, hey, this isn't fiction, perhaps this is much more real than many of the readers, would first consider. Do you include a call for action at all in your novel or when you talk about your book, or is it more kind of you're seeding this amongst the consciousness of the masses and then you're going to, maybe take it from there later on?
Uh, this book, it's more subtle seeding. So I want to be subtle about it, focus more on the kind of the spiritual aspects. But in book two, in book three, I am going to be a little bit more direct about what's really going on in on our planet and what's been happening for eons and manipulation, the extraterrestrial component. I'm definitely going to be more direct. And but for right now, it's kind of more subtle. I don't want to kind of freak people out, I want it to be kind of available to kind of a commercial audience. But yeah, call for action. Right now these programs actually exist. They exist. There's lots of truth in this that main normal people probably wouldn't even consider. But yeah, they certainly exist. I mean, the CIA has had MK Ultra programs that's admitted. There's the remote viewing programs, Project Stargate, and there's all these testimony now of so many of these secret space program whistleblowers coming out and talking about their experiences. And we have the technology for it. We have the cloning technology. If we have the technology for it, we also have recovered ET craft. We're going to use it. That's just a logical deduction. It really doesn't take that much of a logical deduction to say, hey, like we're recovering craft since Roswell, which is basically being admitted in the mainstream now. And what are they going to use that technology for? They're going to use that technology to create their own secret programs, okay, and colonize other planets. But there's been a huge corporate interest and greed holding us back. And I think, we're controlled, we're manipulated, we're constantly fed lies. And, how come we have the same kind of modalities of transportation and energy for the past like 150 years or whatever? It's crazy. Like, and well, everything else, well, there's been other certain advancements, but I think a large majority is being withheld from the public. And we've seen people die. Clearly, people die and murdered because of advances in energy, advances in transportation. And that might be a reason why they've been so blatantly covering up the UFO phenomenon. So yeah, we've been living in a control system, which is why we need to let go of everything that we think we knew and basically be open to the unknown, the infinite potentialities that exist beyond our limited scope of perception. Because that scope of perception, we've all been programmed. The first step to expanding that scope of perception is realizing that we've been programmed and manipulated. So we need to see beyond it.
100%.
But yeah. Yeah, thanks so much, Brian and Arkeen, for your kind words about my book and everything. I think, this has been a very enlightening conversation. Feel free. If you have any other questions, feel free. But already it's been
I'm going with a hard
super.
copy version.
Okay, yeah, I have the hard copy right here, and
Yep.
it's nice to hold in my
I think
hands.
we
So
kind of covered everything we need to cover. I think this is a good place to end things. Really
Yeah.
appreciate you coming on the show. It was a really excellent episode. And like I said, kind of new, and a lot of people don't know about you. I mean, I saw your book cover and I was like, oh, I've seen that in other realities. This one's important.
Well, are you coming to our conference, Mark?
I wish, man, if I had enough PTO, I have to say PTO, unfortunately. But oh man, I wish.
Well, next
Hopefully
year we'll
next
get you
year,
on
definitely.
stage.
Okay.
Yeah, man.
Uh,
Yeah,
And we'll
do a
sell copies of your
presentation on
book.
your book. That would be great.
Yeah,
Yeah.
book signing.
All right. Well,
that'd be
cheers to
wonderful.
you,
Thank
Mark.
you.
Thanks for being on the show. And cheers to you, Brian. I'll see you at the conference.
All right, cheers,
Much
brother.
love.
All right.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Mark.
guys.
Peace.
Bye.
Peace.